Man, this is your commander in chief. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like what you think or what personal opinion you have of this person. He tells you to go somewhere. You're gonna fucking go, and you're gonna do the best job that you possibly can.
When you went to your first tour, who was president on your first tour?
President Bush.
Bush was your first was president in 2000 and what? 2003. When did you get injured?
2003.
What happened? Just briefly.
So I don't know if you remember, in 2003 we went in there and there was that huge battle in Baghdad.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at some point they told us that we had won the war. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we won, so then we took off our mob suits and we were in Iraq and things kind of mellowed down a little bit. Occasionally you hear some gunfire off, but it pretty much mellowed out, So we were a little more leisurely. We were going out and out into the town or whatever, and fucking, I would, how I am, man. Like I would sneak off the base, and I'd go and I'd trade stuff with this family that I knew. I didn't know them personally, but I always went out and I would trade them for whiskey and like bananas or tomatoes and eggs and lamb, and I'd bring it back to the base, and that was like currency, Like I had shit that nobody had. I had like stuff from the country because I had people I'd trade with. So I'd go around, I'd do my rounds. I'd be like, what do you guys want? And then I'd sneak off the base, and I would drive to this certain location where I'd always meet this family. It was a child, a baby girl, and a kid. The boy was like 9 years old. The girl, she was about 5 or 6. You know what I mean? She's fucking beautiful. She was the most beautifulest thing I ever seen in my life. Every time I'd see her, she'd be in a homemade dress for her mom, running around barefoot, and she was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen in the fucking desert. I mean, I swear to you, the most beautifulest thing I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? And so last time I saw her, she was smiling, running around. I give her candy. I went back again a couple of days later, and as I'm pulling up to this spot, this vehicle comes up, and they cut us off, completely cut us off. And I mean, the war was over. My fucking rifle wasn't even loaded. I had my rounds on me, but I didn't have my shit loaded. We were sneaking off base, so there was only 2 of us. I thought we were dead, Thought it was gonna be like a suicide bomber or something. But instead, what happened was this lady jumps out of the car with this little girl. And before I could even react, I jumped out of my Humvee, and before I could even react, she throws what I felt in my heart was the only thing in this place that deserved to fucking live. You know what I mean? And she placed this little girl in my arms, and her whole body was burnt from head to toe. She recognized my voice, and she started to hug me, and her mom was like yelling at me. She didn't know how to speak English. All she was saying was help, help. And so the thing about back then was we couldn't help everybody because our base was not, it was just a little like camp we had. So we had all these people at the front of the camp that were injured that wanted assistance. So we helped one. We're gonna have an entire city coming down on us asking us for help. So they had a triage center they were supposed to go to, but it's like waiting in the ER in LA or some shit, man. You're gonna be there for fucking ever, you know what I mean? So the little daughter, they came to me because it's the only person that they knew and shit, that could probably help them. So what started going through my mind was, do I sneak this little girl on the base and get treatment, for her, and risk my future with my family? Because if I would have done that, I could have lost my rank. I could have, like I said, lost what I had going. My wife was pregnant with my son, you know what I mean? And I didn't want to lose what I had already worked for just because I decided to make a bad decision. So I walked to the gate with this girl in my arms, and there was a crowd there, and they're all yelling and shit and throwing stuff at us. And I started talking to the dudes. I'm like, yo, let me on the base with this little girl. And I was like, I'll put her in my truck, but I need to know that you guys aren't gonna stop me at the gate. Just let me go straight through, you know what I mean? She needs our help. Start arguing with the guy, and the guy was like, no. And it is something like extremely uncommon, because back then it was very unorganized. They pulled their weapons on me. These guys were fucking very strange. They left them at this front gate for like 3 or 4 months and would just drop off food. They were like really weird. So as I'm sitting there arguing with this guy, now like they have their weapons pointed at me and shit, because I snuck off the base, and now I'm trying to get back on the base. They knew who the fuck I was, you know what I mean? I made the decision to let her die in my arms, man. And this is the guy, Franklin, that that can get anything done. At this point, man, there wasn't a chink in my fucking armor. But she died in my fucking arms. And I felt her leave. I lost hope for this small child. When I feel if I would have had hope and I would have made my own decision, she would have lived. I feel like that energy would have been enough. You know what I mean? When somebody's sick and you're like, dude, think positive, you're gonna get better. Instead, I was like, shit, she's gonna die, she's gonna die, she's gonna die. I kept thinking that in my head, she's gonna fucking die. I had to give this girl back to her mom. I gave it back to her mom. And she slapped the shit out of me, man. She slapped me twice and spit in my face. She was crying, bro, like the eternal tears, man, that I'll never forget about them.
That doesn't leave you, man. That like
never.
How do you unsee that?
It never leaves you. I can still smell her. I remember her look on her face. Remember her looking at me. She opened her eyes and she grabbed my heart, man. Her head was right here. You know what I mean? Like, I looked at the little girl's dad, and he was so fucking angry at me. I mean, like, we always smoked a cigarette together. I used to smoke back then. You know what I mean? And he liked Newports. They couldn't get Newports, so him and I would always smoke cigarettes together and stuff. And fucking gave him a cigarette, man. And me and him shared this cigarette together. And he just stared at me. He didn't say a fucking word. He waited.
Who is still on a jack?